On this video, we're going to create an animation of multicolored concentric circles using P5.js. So in our sketch file here, we are just going to declare and initialize some variables. var_diam, which would define the size of our circles, but first let's initialize it with 20. Stroke color, which we would use to vary the colors of our circle. Let's initialize it as an array of 3 zeros. Is growing to know whether to grow or shrink the circles. Now let's set it to true. Then finally two variables centx and centy to position our circles to where we want. Then moving on to our setup function, let's create a canvas of size 500 by 500 or whatever size you want. Set the frame rate to 24, then smooth. Let's make the background white. Then going back to our centx and centy variables, we want to position the circles at the center of our canvas. So let's define the centx as width divided by 2 and the centy as height divided by 2. Set the stroke weight to 10 and the fill to 255,25. The 255 refers to the color white and the 25 refers to the opacity. This would create a gradient effect as the circles are drawn on top of the other. Then on our draw function, let's make the circles only grow as much as 400 pixels in diameter, so let's use an if statement. Let's define the ellipse. Then for every iteration of the draw function, let's increment the variable diam by 20. We now have a simple animation of concentric circles, although it may look like one big circle because the gap between the individual circles is small. You could change this either by making the stroke weight smaller or making the increment of the variable diam larger. Another thing is it's monochromatic. That's because we haven't defined the stroke yet. So next we're going to add some color. So I didn't bother to check if P5.js has some kind of built-in method for this. But anyway, let's create our own way of randomizing the color of the concentric circles. Let's call it color chooser. So the stroke is defined mainly by 3 values for the red, green, and blue. On our function, we have to create a way to randomize these 3 values and pass the values to our array stroke color. For these, let's use the do-while loop nested inside a for loop. And inside the do-while, the math.random would generate a value between 0 and 1, but we don't want too small of a value, so let's multiply that by 100 and use the math.round to just remove the decimals. The highest value for each of the pixels is 255, so let's make the do-while loop iterate as long as the random value is greater than 255. Then pass the value to the respective position in the array stroke color. Then let's go back to the draw function to call our new function, color chooser, and set the stroke. I just made a mistake on the for loop, so let's fix it. And now everything works perfectly. Now we are going to make our animation a bit interactive, and for that we are going to use another function in P5.js called keyPressed. So what we're going to do is to detect whether the spacebar is being pressed and change the value of the variable is growing, which would in turn change whether the circles are growing or shrinking. We then have to modify our draw function to detect the state of the isGrowing variable. On the else part, which is when the circles are shrinking, we have to decrement the variable diam first before drawing the ellipse. Otherwise, we would have another circle that is larger than the previously drawn one. Now what if you want to only change the color when the state of the circle's growth changes, or to make all the circles just a single color? For that, we simply just have to change when we call our function colorChooser. Instead of calling it on the draw function, let's now call it only when the spacebar is pressed. Finally, for a different effect, let's make the stroke only white when the circles are shrinking. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos to see more on how you could create art with code. This is Art and Code.